can we begin this morning with Iran? I'm sure you're aware the Iranian president has spoken in the last half hour or so, saying that shooting down of their plane was an unforgivable error and those responsible will be punished. What is the next step for you as Prime Minister?
Well, obviously what we're saying to the Iranians, and I'm glad that they have accepted responsibility, and I'm glad that they've identified it as an appalling mistake, and it does appear that it was a mistake. It's very important that the bodies are repatriated and in a dignified way, and that the families are allowed to grieve and to have closure. Clearly, Iran, as President Rouhani has said, made a terrible mistake. It's good that they've apologised. The most important thing now is that tensions in the region calm down. And I was actually in Amman just at the weekend talking to people in the region, and they don't want a military conflict between the West and Iran. I don't want
sanctions the next step.
I don't want a military. Let me be very clear. I don't want a military conflict between us, between the United States and Iran. Let's dial this thing down. And you know, Iran, when you look at it, it's an amazing country. It's 80 million people. It's got a young population. They're literate. They should be orientated towards free markets, towards our way of doing things, and yet they're the captives, they're the prisoners of this approach, this government that they have. Well, we're not easily going to change the government, but we need to engage with the people of Iran. We need
but
to
should
work,
they face consequences, Prime Minister?
Well, I think that there is a very, very, they've clearly guilty of an appalling error. I don't think that we are currently envisaging any further escalation of the tensions.
You talked about dialing down. The thing that dialed this up in the first place was the killing of General Soleimani 10 days ago. Where were you when you first heard about that?
I was not in this country, but I worked very hard, as you can imagine, to ensure that there was a European response. And there was a good European response. There was a good UK response to the crisis.
You were on holiday there, weren't you?
I worked also with our
American...
I was. It's no secret. And we got a good European response to the crisis. We worked with the Americans, and with, obviously, we talked to the Iranians, so of course to the Iraqis, and I think that the UK played its traditional role, which is to serve as the bridge between the European powers.
Is the UK's
and the United
traditional
States.
role to not be told about that sort of thing before it happens? Because the decision had already been made before you'd been informed about.
Well, let's be clear. This was not our operation. There was no reason for us to be
but
involved.
Would you expect to be let in on that?
There were no UK assets involved, and it was perfectly right that it went ahead as it. There's no reason for us to be notified. Our job, once it had happened, was to make clear our position, which was, we're not going to weep hot tears over the death of a guy who had the blood of British troops on his hands. Let's be frank. Nor, on the other hand, as I've just told you, do we want to see any kind of escalation in the Middle East,
which many will understand. Listening to you this morning, and some people watching this will say, this was an opportunity for you to show leadership as Prime Minister. Did you think about coming back from your holiday?
Well, we had as I say, my job was to concert the UK response and the European response to make sure that the United States understood our perspective, and to work very hard to ensure that there was no escalation. And I think when you look at what has happened in the days since the death of Qasem Soleimani, I think we are in a better place. That doesn't mean that the tensions aren't there. And the UK will continue to work for engagement and dialogue. Now, we're going to come under pressure. Everybody will say, well, you've got to get rid of this nuclear deal, the JCPOA, right? This is what Trump wants. Get rid of the JCPOA. My point to our American friends is, look, somehow or other, we've got to stop the Iranians acquiring a nuclear weapon. I think that's the most. That's what the Joint Collective Points Agreement does, the JCPOA. But if we're going to get rid of it, then we need a replacement. Now, the problem with the JCPOA is basically, and this is the crucial thing, this is why there's this tension. The problem with the agreement is that from the American perspective, it's a flawed agreement, it expires, plus it was negotiated by President Obama, and it has, from their point of view, it has many, many faults. Well, if we're going to get rid of it, let's replace it, and let's replace it with the Trump deal.
Okay.
That's what we need to see. And I think that would be a great way forward. President Trump is a great deal maker, by his own account, and many others. Let's work together to replace the JCPOA and get the Trump deal instead.
Can I ask
That's
you about
the opportunity.
Your own deals? Do you think what's happened with General Soleimani, has that made it more difficult for Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe to return to the UK? I know it's something that you've been involved in during your previous jobs as well.
No, absolutely. I think the FCO, and we all work very hard to secure the release of a number of very difficult consular cases, including Nazanin. I'm seeing Richard Ratcliffe, her husband, very soon. It's hard to say whether the death of Qasem Soleimani has actually made that particular case more or less difficult. I mean, I think Richard has his views, others have different views. Let's see how we go.